The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 in the morning, just like it did every single day. Maya's hand shot out from under the thin blanket, slapping the snooze button with practiced precision. 5 more minutes. That's all she ever asked for. 5 more minutes before facing another endless day. Her studio apartment was barely bigger than a closet. The morning light squeezed through the single window, revealing peeling paint on the walls and a crack in the ceiling that seemed to grow a little longer each month. The radiator clanked and hissed, but rarely produced any actual heat. Winter mornings were the worst. Maya dragged herself out of bed and caught her reflection in the small mirror hanging by the door. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of too many double shifts and not enough sleep. At 28 years old, she looked older. Working at the Grandview Hotel did that to people. The uniform hung on the back of her door. Freshly washed but permanently wrinkled. Black pants, white shirt, black vest. She'd worn the same outfit 6 days a week for the past 3 years. Sometimes she forgot what her own clothes even looked like. The subway ride to work was packed with other early morning workers. Construction guys with lunch pails, nurses heading to the hospital, janitors with mops and cleaning supplies. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Maya squeezed into a corner and let her mind wander, which was dangerous. Thinking too much about her life made everything harder. She remembered being 18, full of dreams and possibilities. The acceptance letter from the Eastern Music Academy had felt like winning the lottery. Her piano teacher had cried actual tears of joy. Her parents had thrown a small party with all their friends and neighbors. Everyone had been so proud. 3 years of study, 3 years of practicing until her fingers ached. 3 years of believing she was building toward something magnificent. Then her father got sick. Cancer. The aggressive kind that ate through their savings faster than it ate through his body. Suddenly, tuition money became hospital bills. Her dreams became luxuries they couldn't afford. The subway screeched to a stop. Maya pushed through the crowd and climbed the stairs to street level. The Grandview Hotel loomed ahead, all glass and marble and pretentious elegance. Rich people's playground. She walked through the service entrance in the back, the one hidden from the guests' delicate eyes. The staff locker room buzzed with morning chatter. Other servers were already there, pulling on their uniforms. Complaining about sore feet and difficult customers? Morning. Maya called out Rita, a woman in her 50s who'd worked there for 15 years. You've got tables 9 through 15 today. Fair warning, there's some big charity thing tonight. The rich folks will be extra demanding. Maya nodded and tied her apron. Her hands moved automatically through the familiar routine. Check the pocket for pen and notepad. Make sure her hair was pulled back neatly. Paste on the smile. The fake smile that said, "I'm happy to serve you," even when every bone in her body ached. The morning shift started slow. Breakfast service for hotel guests. Eggs and bacon for people who probably spent more on one meal than Maya made in a week. She moved between tables like a ghost, refilling coffee cups and clearing plates. Nobody really looked at her. To them, she was just part of the furniture. Another piece of the hotel's decoration, but around 11 o'clock, the real work began. The hotel's grand ballroom needed to be set up for tonight's charity gala. Maya and a dozen other servers spent hours arranging tables, folding napkins into elaborate shapes, polishing silverware until it gleamed. Her feet already hurt, and the actual event hadn't even started. During her lunch break, Maya sat in the service corridor, eating a sandwich she'd brought from home. She could hear music drifting from somewhere inside the hotel. Someone was testing the sound system in the ballroom. Piano music. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Her hands twitched involuntarily. Muscle memory. Her fingers moved against her lap, playing the invisible keys, following along with the recording. She closed her eyes, and for just a moment she wasn't in a dingy corridor in her work uniform. She was back in the academy's practice room, lost in the music, feeling alive. "You okay?" Rita sat down beside her with her own lunch. "You look like you were having a moment." Maya opened her eyes, and the fantasy evaporated. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." "Aren't we all, honey? Aren't we all?" The afternoon dragged on. More preparations, more polishing, more straightening and arranging. Maya's manager, Mr. Peterson, stalked through the ballroom like a nervous cat, checking every detail 3 times. This gala was apparently a big deal. Lots of important donors. Lots of money on the line. Everything must be perfect, he kept saying, his voice tight with stress. These people expect perfection. By 6 o'clock, the transformation was complete. The ballroom looked like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. White tablecloths draped perfectly. A massive piano sat on the stage, polished until it reflected the lights like a black mirror. It was a Steinway. Maya recognized it immediately. The same kind she used to play at the academy. She stood there for a moment, staring at it. Her hands trembled slightly. It had been 5 years since she'd played a real piano. 5 years of pushing down the longing, the ache, the feeling that a part of her soul was missing. "Stop daydreaming and get back to work," barked Mr. Peterson. Snapping her back to reality, the guests started arriving at 7. They came in luxury cars and expensive taxis, dressed in gowns and tuxedos that probably cost more than Maya's entire year's rent. Diamonds sparkled on necks and wrists. Designer shoes clicked against marble floors. The air filled with perfume and cologne and the particular scent of money. Maya moved through the crowd with her tray, offering champagne and appetizers. She'd learned long ago to make herself invisible. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. Smile politely, but not too much. Be there, but not really there. The conversations floated around her like background noise. Stock portfolios. Vacation homes in the Hamptons. Which private school was better for little Timmy? Complaints about their personal chefs taking a day off. These people lived in a different universe. She caught glimpses of her reflection in the ballroom's massive mirrors. Among all that glamour and wealth, she looked exactly like what she was. A tired waitress in a cheap uniform, serving people who would never see her as fully human. But then she saw the piano again, sitting there on the stage, waiting. The grand Steinway. And despite everything, despite the exhaustion and the dead dreams and the reality of her life, something stirred inside her chest. A tiny flame that refused to go completely out. She didn't know it yet. But in just a few hours, that piano would change everything. Her life was about to take a turn she never could have imagined. But for now, she was just a waitress. Moving through a crowd of wealthy strangers, invisible and forgotten, carrying her tray and her hidden talents like secrets too precious to speak out loud, the evening was just beginning. The ballroom was packed now. Every table filled with wealthy donors dressed in their finest clothes. Maya weaved between them, balancing her tray with practiced ease. Her feet screamed in protest, but she'd learned to ignore the pain years ago. Mr. Peterson stood near the entrance, greeting guests with an oily smile that never quite reached his eyes. He kept checking his watch, then glancing toward the stage. Maya noticed his nervous energy. Something was making him more anxious than usual. The evening schedule was printed on elegant cards at each table. Cocktails and appetizers at 7. Dinner at 8. Then the main entertainment at 9:30. A performance by the world-renowned pianist Victor Kensington. Maya had heard the name before. He'd played at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, the kind of venues she used to dream about. By 8:15 dinner service was in full swing. Maya carried plates of salmon and filet mignon, each dish arranged like a work of art. The guests barely looked at the food. They were too busy talking about their latest business deals and charity projects. Talking about helping the poor while spending thousands on a single meal. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. "Excuse me, miss," a woman with too much jewelry called out. "This wine isn't cold enough." "Bring me another bottle." Maya nodded, took the barely touched bottle, and headed back to the service area. Behind the scenes, the kitchen was chaos. Chefs shouting orders. Servers rushing in and out. Dishwashers working at lightning speed. This was the world the guests never saw. The machinery that made their perfect evening possible. She was returning with the new wine bottle. Oh, when she heard raised voices coming from the manager's office. The door was slightly open. Mr. Peterson was inside, and he sounded panicked. What do you mean he's not coming? This is a disaster. Maya slowed down, trying not to eavesdrop but unable to help herself. A car accident? Is he all right? Mr. Peterson's voice climbed higher. I don't care if it's minor. He's supposed to be here in 45 minutes. These people paid $5,000 per plate, and they expect Victor Kensington. Maya's heart started beating faster. The pianist wasn't coming. Call everyone on the list. Every pianist in the city? I don't care what it costs. Mr. Peterson was practically shouting now. Find me someone who can play, anyone. She quickly moved away before anyone noticed her listening. But her mind was racing. The famous pianist wasn't coming. They needed someone who could play. Her hands trembled as she delivered the wine to the jewelry woman's table. For the next 20 minutes, Maya watched Mr. Peterson make phone call after phone call. His face got redder with each conversation. She could tell from his body language that no one was available. It was Saturday night. Every professional pianist in the city was already booked. By 9 o'clock, panic had spread through the entire staff. Whispers flew through the service corridors. The entertainment had fallen through. Mr. Peterson looked like he might have a heart attack. He stood in the hallway, running his hands through his thinning hair. Muttering to himself, Maya stood nearby, pretending to organize napkins. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. A crazy idea had planted itself in her mind, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake it loose. She could play. She knew she could. She'd spent 3 years at one of the best music academies in the country. She'd performed in recitals, competitions, concerts. That was 5 years ago, but muscle memory didn't just disappear. Did it? But who would believe her? She was just a waitress. Mr. Peterson barely knew her name. The guests certainly didn't see her as anything more than the help. Walking up to him and offering to play seemed insane. What if she'd forgotten everything? What if her fingers didn't work the way they used to? What if she froze on stage in front of all those people? The humiliation would be unbearable. She'd probably lose her job. But then she thought about that Steinway, sitting on the stage, waiting, silent. She thought about the music locked inside her, the part of her soul she'd buried for 5 years. When would she ever get another chance like this? Her feet moved before her brain could stop them. She walked toward Mr. Peterson, her mouth dry, her hand shaking. Mr. Peterson. He looked at her with wild, distracted eyes. What? I'm busy. I know you need a pianist. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted.
Yes.
And unless you have a miracle in your pocket, I don't have time for this. He turned away. I can play. I froze. Slowly turned back to face her. What did you say? I can play the piano. I studied at the Eastern Music Academy for 3 years. I can perform tonight. What? For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. You're a waitress. The word stung, but Maya forced herself to stand straighter. I'm a waitress now. But I trained as a concert pianist. I can play the program. Beethoven, Chopin, Rachmaninoff. I know all of it. Mr. Peterson's laugh died. He looked at her more closely now, like he was seeing her for the first time. His eyes darted between Maya and the ballroom full of wealthy donors. She could see him calculating. What did he have to lose? Without any entertainment, the whole evening would be a disaster anyway. You're serious? He asked, completely serious. Another long pause. The sounds of the party drifted through the walls. Laughter, conversation, the clinking of glasses. All those people expecting a world-class performance. All that money on the line. If you mess this up, Mr. Peterson said slowly, you're fired. You understand that? Maya nodded. I understand. Fine, come with me. He grabbed her arm and pulled her down the corridor. They burst into the women's locker room, where Rita was taking a break. Rita, we need a black dress. Simple, elegant. Something that fits her. He gestured at Maya. Rita's eyes went wide.
What's happening?
Just find a dress. Now. The next 15 minutes were a blur. Rita dug through her locker and pulled out a simple black dress she kept for special occasions. It was a little loose on Maya, but looked decent enough. Someone else found a pair of black heels. Another server helped pin Maya's hair into a neat bun. Maya caught glimpses of herself in the mirror. She looked terrified. Because she was terrified. What had she just agreed to? Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Can you really do this?" Rita whispered, concern in her eyes. "I don't know," Maya admitted. "I haven't played in 5 years. Then why did you volunteer?" Maya looked at her reflection. At the dark circles under her eyes. At the exhaustion etched into her face. At the dreams she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. Because if I don't try now, I never will. Rita squeezed her hand. "Then you go out there and you show them what you've got." Mr. Peterson appeared in the doorway. "It's time. The guests are getting restless." Maya's legs felt like water. This was it. This was actually happening. In 2 minutes, she'd be walking onto that stage in front of hundreds of wealthy, judgmental people who were expecting a world-famous pianist. Instead, they were getting a waitress in a borrowed dress. She followed Mr. Peterson toward the ballroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could hear him rehearsing an announcement in his head, trying to figure out how to spin this situation. They reached the entrance to the ballroom. Through the doorway, Maya could see the crowd, the lights, the stage. And there, gleaming under the spotlight, the Steinway piano waited for her. This was the craziest thing she'd ever done. It would probably end in disaster. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the fear and doubt, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where she was meant to be. Mr. Peterson walked onto the stage first. The conversations in the ballroom gradually died down as people noticed him standing there under the spotlight. Maya waited in the wings, hidden behind the heavy curtain, her whole body trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Peterson began, his voice amplified by the microphone. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news. Victor Kensington has been involved in a minor traffic incident this evening and won't be able to join us." A wave of disappointed murmurs rippled through the crowd. Maya could see faces turning toward each other, eyebrows raising, lips pursing. $5,000 per plate and no entertainment. However, Mr. Peterson continued, his voice a bit steadier now. "We have secured a replacement performer for this evening. Please welcome to the stage our very own pianist." That was her cue. Maya's legs felt like they might give out, but she forced herself to move. One step, then another. The borrowed heels clicked against the polished floor. As she emerged from behind the curtain, the murmuring grew louder. She could see the confusion on their faces. Who was this girl? Where did she come from? This wasn't Victor Kensington. This was nobody. Some guests were already pulling out their phones, probably texting their friends about the disaster unfolding. One man in the front row leaned over to his wife. "Is this a joke?" His voice carried further than he probably intended. Maya reached the piano bench and sat down. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together in her lap for a moment. The Steinway loomed before her, black and massive and perfect. Under the spotlight, she could see every detail of the polished wood, every ivory key. The ballroom had gone quiet now. That awful, judgmental silence. Hundreds of eyes watching her, waiting for her to fail. She could feel their skepticism like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders. She thought about running. Just standing up and walking off the stage. She could go back to being invisible. Back to carrying trays and refilling wine glasses. Safe, anonymous, small. But then her fingers touched the keys. The cool, smooth surface felt like coming home. 5 years melted away in an instant. Her hands remembered. Of course they remembered. You don't forget something that was once part of your soul. She closed her eyes and began to play. The opening notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata floated through the ballroom, soft at first, almost hesitant. The familiar melody wrapped around her like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. Her fingers moved across the keys, and suddenly nothing else mattered. Not the judgmental crowd. Not the borrowed dress. Not the years of carrying trays and swallowing her dreams. There was only the music. The first movement flowed like water, gentle and melancholic. Maya let herself sink into it, feeling every note in her chest. She'd played this piece 100 times at the academy. She'd played it at her final recital before dropping out. Back then, she'd played it perfectly but mechanically, focused on hitting every note correctly. Now she played it with everything she'd learned in the 5 years since. Every disappointment, every morning waking up exhausted, every moment watching rich people treat her like she was invisible, every ounce of grief for the life she'd lost. It all poured into the music. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Maya didn't notice. She was somewhere else entirely, lost in the world the music created. Her fingers danced faster now, moving into the more complex passages. Muscle memory took over. Her hands knew what to do. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. But she didn't stop playing. Couldn't stop. This was the first time in 5 years she'd felt fully alive. The first time she'd remembered who she really was beneath the uniform, and the uniform. Exhaustion. She transitioned seamlessly into Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she'd heard playing over the speakers during her lunch break. But this was different. This was real. The notes sang out from the Steinway with a richness and depth that no recording could capture. Her fingers flew across the keys with impossible grace. Fast passages that would have tripped up lesser players flowed effortlessly. The music swelled and dipped, following the emotional landscape Chopin had created over a century ago. But Maya made it her own, adding subtle variations, tiny moments of hesitation and acceleration that brought fresh life to the familiar piece in the audience. People had stopped checking their phones. The man who'd called it a joke sat frozen, his mouth slightly open. Women who'd been adjusting their jewelry now sat perfectly still. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Standing like statues along the walls, Maya moved into Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. This was the dangerous one. The piece that had always challenged her even at her peak. Complex, demanding, requiring both technical skill and raw emotional power. Her hands attacked the keys with newfound confidence. The famous opening chords crashed through the ballroom like thunder. Dark and brooding and powerful, this wasn't pretty music. This was music that grabbed you by the throat and demanded you feel something. She played faster now, her fingers a blur. The complicated middle section that had always given her trouble simply happened. Her hands knew where to go. The years of practice, all those hours in the Academy's practice rooms, came flooding back. It had all been building toward this moment. The music climbed higher and higher, building to the explosive climax. Maya's whole body moved with the music now, swaying and leaning into the dramatic moments. She wasn't thinking anymore. She was just feeling, just being, just alive. And then the final notes, powerful, definitive, perfect. Her hands lifted from the keys. The last note hung in the air, resonating through the silent ballroom. Maya sat perfectly still, hardly breathing, slowly coming back to reality. For 3 heartbeats, there was absolute silence. Then the applause started. It began with one person in the back, then spread like wildfire through the entire ballroom. Within seconds, everyone was on their feet. Not polite golf claps. Real applause, thunderous. Some people were actually cheering. Maya opened her eyes, suddenly aware of where she was. The spotlight blinded her, but she could see shapes standing, could hear the roar of approval washing over her. Her mind struggled to process what was happening. They were applauding. For her, for Maya, invisible waitress they'd been ignoring all night. An elegant woman in the 3rd row had tears streaming down her face, not bothering to wipe them away. The man who'd called it a joke was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Even Mr. Peterson stood to the side of the stage, looking stunned. Maya stood up on shaking legs and did an awkward bow. The applause grew louder. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" Others joined in. The sound was overwhelming, almost frightening in its intensity. Her knees felt weak. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance was draining away, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. She'd done it. Actually done it. And they'd loved it. But this was just the beginning. As she stood there under the spotlight, squinting at the sea of standing, applauding wealthy strangers. Maya had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't even imagine. Among the crowd, certain people were already pulling out their phones, not to text complaints this time, to make calls. Important calls. To people who needed to know about the extraordinary talent they'd just witnessed. The waitress who could play like an angel was about to become much more than a waitress. But first, she had to figure out how to walk off the stage without collapsing. Maya somehow made it off the stage without falling. Her legs felt like rubber, and her vision was blurry from tears. The applause followed her into the wings, still thunderous, still unbelievable. She leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath, trying to understand what had just happened. Rita appeared with a glass of water. Girl, that was incredible. I had no idea you could play like that. Maya took the water with trembling hands. Neither did I mean. I knew I could play, but I didn't know if I still could. Does that make sense? Before Rita could answer, Mr. Peterson rushed over, his face flushed with excitement. The same man who'd barely known her name an hour ago now looked at her like she'd just saved his life. That was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. He was practically bouncing. The guests are asking about you. Important people, Maya. Very important people. Maya was still trying to process everything. Her heart hadn't stopped racing. Her hands still tingled from playing. The whole experience felt like a dream she might wake up from any second. I need you to come back out, Mr. Peterson said. People want to meet you. What? No, I can't. I'm not. I'm just a waitress. Not anymore. You're not. He gently but firmly guided her back toward the ballroom. Trust me on this. The scene that greeted her was surreal. Dozens of well-dressed people crowded near the stage, all looking expectantly in her direction. These were the same people who'd looked right through her when she was serving them dinner. Now they saw her. Really saw her. An elegant older woman in a stunning silver gown approached first. Everything about her screamed wealth and sophistication, from her perfectly styled gray hair to her designer shoes. But her eyes were kind, and they were still slightly red from crying. My dear, that was one of the most moving performances I've witnessed in 30 years of attending concerts. She held out her hand. I'm Catherine Blackwell. I'm the director of the National Symphony Orchestra. Maya's heart stopped. The National Symphony Orchestra? One of the most prestigious orchestras in the country. She shook the woman's hand, barely able to speak. Thank you. Thank you. Where did you study? Catherine asked, her eyes sharp and assessing now. Is to music academy? But I only completed 3 years before I had to leave. Financial reasons? Maya nodded, embarrassed. These people probably couldn't imagine not being able to afford something. But Catherine's expression softened with understanding, not judgment. Talent like yours doesn't come along often. We need to talk. Seriously talk. She pulled a business card from her clutch. Call my office Monday morning. Don't make me hunt you down. Before Maya could respond, a man in an expensive suit stepped forward. He had the kind of confidence that came with serious money. Vincent Chen, he introduced himself. I run a tech company, but my real passion is supporting the arts. That performance was remarkable. Have you ever recorded an album? An album? No, I've never. I'm not a professional. I work here. Shouldn't be working here, Vincent said bluntly. You should be performing, recording, sharing that gift with the world. He handed her his card too. I'd like to fund a recording session for you. Professional studio, top engineers, whatever you need. We can discuss details, but I'm thinking $50,000 to start. Maya stared at the card in her hand. $50,000. That was more than she made in 2 years of waitressing. This couldn't be real. More people crowded around. A woman who owned several art galleries wanted to host a private concert. A music producer wanted to discuss representation. A wealthy couple wanted to sponsor her return to the academy. Everyone was talking at once, pressing cards into her hands, making offers that sounded too good to be true. Maya felt overwhelmed, almost dizzy. 20 minutes ago, she'd been invisible. Now she had more opportunities than she could count. It was too much, too fast. Then someone's phone rang. A younger woman near the back of the crowd answered it, listened for a moment, then pushed her way forward. "Excuse me, Maya?" She held up her phone. "I just got a call from my sister. Someone recorded your performance and posted it online. It's already going viral." "What?" The woman turned her phone around. There on the screen was Maya, sitting at the piano, lost in the music. The video already had thousands of views and hundreds of comments, and it had only been posted 10 minutes ago. "This is unbelievable," someone in the crowd said, scrolling through their own phone. "It's on every social media platform. People are sharing it everywhere." Maya watched in stunned silence as the numbers climbed. 5,000 views, 10,000, 15,000. The comments rolled in faster than she could read them. "This made me cry. Most beautiful piano playing I've ever heard. Why isn't she famous? I need to know her story." Her phone, still tucked in the locker room with her regular clothes, was probably exploding with notifications. Not that many people had her number. The few who did were probably freaking out. Catherine Blackwell watched the view count climb and nodded knowingly. This is how it happens now. Viral fame. By tomorrow morning, you'll be on the news. By tomorrow afternoon, every media outlet in the country will want to interview you. Vincent pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "I'm emailing my PR team right now. You're going to need representation. Someone to handle all the attention coming your way." "I don't understand," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This morning, I was serving breakfast. Tonight, I'm going viral. This doesn't happen to people like me." Rita, who'd been watching from a distance, came over and squeezed Maya's shoulder. "It just did, honey." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More introductions. More business cards. More promises and offers and life-changing opportunities. Maya's head spun with all of it. Catherine Blackwell stayed close, almost protective, steering her away from people who seemed more interested in exploitation than genuine help. Around midnight, the crowd finally started to thin. Guests headed home, still talking excitedly about the unexpected performance they'd witnessed. Maya found herself sitting in a quiet corner of the now-empty ballroom, a stack of business cards in her lap, trying to process everything. Mr. Peterson approached cautiously. "Maya, I just want to say, I'm sorry. For not seeing who you really were. For treating you like you were just another server." Maya looked up at him, too exhausted for anger. "You treated me exactly like a server because that's what I was. That's what I am." "No," he said firmly. "That's what you've been doing to pay the bills. It's not who you are. Tonight proved that." After he left, Maya sat alone in the massive ballroom. The Steinway still sat on the stage, silent now. She walked over to it, running her hand along the polished wood. This piano had changed her life. Or maybe she'd changed her own life by being brave enough to play it. Her phone buzzed. She'd retrieved it from her locker, and just as predicted, it was flooded with notifications. Messages from old classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. Calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Emails from journalists and booking agents. One text stood out. It was from her younger brother, the one she'd been supporting through college. "I just saw the video. I'm crying. I'm so proud of you. But I'm also sorry. You gave up your dreams for me and I never really understood what that meant until now. You're amazing." "Yes." Maya's eyes filled with tears again. She typed back, "I didn't give up my dreams. I just put them on hold. And tonight, I got them back." Ow. She looked around the empty ballroom one last time. Tomorrow, everything would be different. The news coverage, the interviews, the decisions about which opportunities to pursue. Her quiet, invisible life was over. But tonight, right now, she was just Maya, a waitress who remembered she was also a pianist, a girl who took a terrifying chance and discovered that sometimes, when you're brave enough to reach for your dreams, they reach back. She walked toward the exit, the borrowed dress swishing around her legs, her future suddenly bright and uncertain and thrilling. Maya didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, She saw the faces in the crowd, heard the thunderous applause, felt her fingers flying across the piano keys. By morning, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. News stations, radio shows, podcasts. Everyone wanted to talk to the waitress who could play like a concert pianist. The story had everything people loved: struggle, hidden talent, an unexpected moment of triumph. It was the kind of story that gave people hope. She called Catherine Blackwell first thing Monday morning, just like she'd been told. The secretary put her through immediately. "I was hoping you'd call, Catherine," said warmly. "Can you come to the Symphony Hall this afternoon? I'd like you to play for our board of directors, an audition, more like a formality. After what I saw Saturday night, I already know what you're capable of. But I need the board to hear you in person. Can you make it at 2? Maya looked around her tiny apartment. She was supposed to work the lunch shift at the hotel, but something told her that her waitressing days were over. "I'll be there." Next, she called Mr. Peterson to give her notice. She felt bad leaving the other servers short-staffed, but he was surprisingly understanding. "Maya, after what happened, I think we both know you're meant for bigger things. You take care of yourself. And hey, when you're famous, remember the little people. Okay?" He laughed, but she could hear real happiness in his voice. Rita was less cheerful when Maya told her. They met for coffee before Maya's audition. "I'm going to miss you," Rita said, stirring her cup absently. "The place won't be the same without you. I'm going to miss you too. You were always kind to me when a lot of people treated me like I was invisible. You were never invisible, honey. You were just waiting for your moment. And when it came, you grabbed it with both hands." Rita reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Promise me something, though. Don't let all this change who you are. Stay the same Maya who brought sandwiches from home and helped cover shifts when people were sick. The world needs more people like that." Maya promised, though part of her wondered if she could keep that promise. Everything was changing so fast. The audition at the Symphony Hall went perfectly. The board members sat in the empty concert hall while Maya played the same pieces from Saturday night. When she finished, they gave her a standing ovation, just like the crowd at the gala. Catherine offered her a contract on the spot. She would be a featured soloist for the upcoming season. Vincent Chen came through with his promise to... Within 2 weeks, Maya was in a professional recording studio, laying down tracks for her debut album. The sound engineers were amazed at how quickly she worked, how few takes she needed. What they didn't understand was that she'd been rehearsing these pieces in her head for 5 years. Every song was already perfect in her mind. She just needed to let it out. The album would be called Second Chances. All the proceeds beyond production costs would go to a scholarship fund Maya was setting up. The fund would help music students from low-income families afford conservatory tuition. Students like she had been. Students who shouldn't have to choose between their dreams and their family's financial survival. But the craziest moment came 3 weeks after the gala. Maya received an email from Victor Kensington himself, the famous pianist whose cancellation had given her the opportunity of a lifetime. "Dear Maya," it read, "I've watched your video at least 20 times. Your technique is flawless, but that's not what makes your playing special. You play with a depth of emotion that can't be taught. It comes from having lived, from having struggled. It's from understanding what it means to lose something precious and fight to get it back. I would be honored if you would perform with me at my concert next month. Please consider it." With admiration, Victor, Maya read the email 3 times to make sure it was real. Victor Kensington wanted to perform with her, the man who was supposed to play that night at the gala, the man whose absence had changed her life. She said yes, of course. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Cameras followed her everywhere. Reporters wanted to know every detail of her story. Some of the attention felt invasive, but Catherine helped her navigate it. She taught Maya which interviews to accept, which to politely decline, how to protect her privacy while still sharing her message. And Maya did have a message. In every interview, she talked about the importance of arts education. She talked about the talented kids who never got a chance because they couldn't afford lessons or instruments. She talked about the teachers who believed in their students even when nobody else did. She used her platform for something bigger than herself, Her first official concert with the National Symphony Orchestra sold out in 48 hours. Maya stood backstage on opening night, wearing an elegant black gown that actually belonged to her this time. Felt the familiar nervousness creeping in. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't a waitress in a borrowed dress, taking a desperate chance. This time she was a professional pianist, exactly where she belonged. When she walked onto the stage, the applause was immediate and warm. She looked out at the sea of faces. Some were wealthy patrons who could afford expensive tickets. But she also saw familiar faces. Rita was there in a seat near the front that Maya had personally reserved for her. Her brother was there with their parents, all of them crying before she'd even played a single note. Other servers from the hotel had pooled their money to buy tickets together, and in the very back, standing because they couldn't afford seats, were a group of students from the Eastern Music Academy. Kids who reminded her of herself at that age. Full of dreams and talent but uncertain about their futures, she played for all of them. For Rita and the other workers who spent their lives making other people comfortable. For her family, who had sacrificed so much. For the students who needed to see that someone like them could make it, the performance was transcendent. Maya poured everything into the music. Not just the pain and struggle of the past 5 years, but also the joy of this moment. The gratitude, the hope, the knowledge that life could surprise you when you least expected it. After the final note, after the standing ovation, after the flowers and the congratulations, Maya found a quiet moment backstage. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had carried countless trays of food, the same hands that had almost forgotten what it felt like to touch piano keys. Catherine found her there, smiling. How does it feel? Maya thought about the question. How did it feel to have her dreams back? To be doing what she loved? To have a future that looked nothing like the past 5 years of struggle? It feels like waking up, Maya said finally. Like I was sleeping for a long time, and I finally remembered who I was supposed to be. Well, the world is very glad you woke up. Catherine handed her a schedule. Because you have 17 more performances this season than a European tour next year, and at least 6 universities want you to come give masterclasses. Her life had become busy and complicated and full of opportunities she never dreamed possible. But she'd learned something important that night at the gala. Sometimes, the biggest moments in life come when you're least prepared for them. Sometimes opportunity doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it crashes through the door when everything seems lost. And when that happens, you have 2 choices. You can hide and let the moment pass. Or you can be brave enough to step onto the stage. Even when your hands are shaking and your knees are weak and everyone is expecting you to fail, Maya had chosen bravery, and it had changed everything. As she left the concert hall that night, signing autographs and taking photos with fans, she thought about all the people out there still waiting tables, still working jobs that didn't fulfill them, still carrying hidden talents the world hadn't discovered yet. Her story was proof that it was never too late, that dreams could survive even when buried deep, that one moment of courage could transform an entire life. The waitress had become a pianist, but more importantly, Maya had become herself again, and that made all the difference.